This is an extremely dense nuclear cataract, and the incisions have been made. I'm going to now inject trypan blue. First, air will come out of the syringe, and then the trypan to stay in the anterior capsule. And the pupil's not that well dilated, so I'm just injecting a little bit of trypan just to get a touch underneath the margin of the sphincter there. And now I'm going to inject viscoat distal to the air bubble. The pupil expands a little bit with that viscoat, and the air bubble's expelled. Now comes Provisc injection. That's a straight 25 gauge disposable needle. And as the Provisc comes out and fills a little bit of the central chamber, I'm going to make a vertical incision here with the sharp 25 gauge needle and just enlarge it a little bit. And in a moment I'll be grabbing that with Capsule forceps. Now during the Capsule I'm going to want to stabilize the globe position, so I'm using a spatula to do that. This is topical anesthesia, and I routinely do that anyway. And here I've grabbed the edge of the capsular tear, and I'm going to go try to make a capsulorhexis that's somewhere between 4.5 and maybe 4.9 or 5 millimeters. Watching the advancing tear, and it's in this eye it's a little tricky to see it. There's hardly any red reflex. With that done, it's now hydrodissection time. That's a flat 23 gauge hydrodissection cannula. Get a broad fluid wave on each side between the nucleus, actually hopefully cortex and capsule. Now I'm going to do 360 degrees of viscodissection, and I want to get viscoed all the way out into the capsular fornix. So I've done about half of it. Now I'll go through the side port and get that portion of the capsular fornix filled with viscoat. And then finally I'm going to go back through the primary incision and inject there. So now I've got viscoat all the way out in the sulcus, and I'm going to now place capsule retractors. And I want to do that because there's going to be a lot of manipulation here, and I'm doing that through some vertical incisions. They're about 1 millimeter, but they're vertical. The shape of the capsule retractor demands that, and it's the best. You don't want a beveled incision for these. And I'm going to put one every 90 degrees. These are the Chang version of the MST retractor, and they're my favorite. These are modifications of the original Mackool cataract support system or capsule retractors. Now the deal here is not to really retract the capsule, but just to place the edge of the hook against the capsule. It is the tip of the retractor that goes out into the capsular fornix that provides the desired support for the capsule nuclear complex during phacoemulsification. So you can see the stoppers being placed in such a manner as to gently place the retractor against the margin of the capsule and not to retract it. Alright, so we'll insert our phaco tip, followed by the chopper, and wet the cornea. Good. So in very dense nuclei, chopping to go direct to chopping usually doesn't work. So we're going to put this chopper out over the equator and hold the lens nice and still. And our plan will be to divide it into 2 heminuclei first. Wet the cornea. Good. So we're using high power but relatively low flow and vacuum. And we're going to go pretty far out into the periphery. And then we're going to rotate the lens and go the other direction. Wet the cornea. And this back and forth will continue until we get the lens divided in half. Nice and still. So this is the beginning, if you will, of a divide and conquer method. But the most resistant part to cracking will be the center. So we'll work on that a little at a time. Now we'll turn it back around and go back in the other direction again. Wet cornea. Good. Now stabilize it with the chopper. And wet the cornea. Good. Now that shiny stuff is epinucleus. And typically, we can divide the nucleus in half once we get down to that epinucleus. Just a little bit left right there. Now let's see if we can get that. There we go. So now we have two heminuclei. Quadrant removal. So once you divide the dense nucleus in half, it's not so hard to chop the heminucleus into half. Wet the cornea. Sculpt. Quadrant. And we'll just position this one. Wet the cornea. So there are 3 quadrants down and 1 to go. See where the chopper is holding the posterior capsule away. Oh, piece of nucleus wants to go over there. So now we're ready for INA. INA has been done. It was routine. We're injecting the IOL through this Monarch D cartridge directly into the capsular sac, and we're leaving the retractors in while we do it. Now the trailing haptic and optic will be depressed into the capsular sac before the lens fully opens. And with that done, the next step is going to be to remove the retractors. Now there are 2 options when removing the retractors. One of them is to simply release the stop and then pull the retractor directly out of the incision after you've freed it from the capsule. The other is what I'm showing here, which is freeing it from the stopper and then grasping the hook with a forceps and pulling it across the anterior chamber. The retractors on the side can be similarly removed, but the retractor near the incision, you really wouldn't have a mechanical advantage to do that. So let's pull this one out right through the primary incision as we did the first retractor. And now you can see all retractors have been removed and the incisions are tested and they're watertight. So that's the completed procedure on this dense nucleus.